So this is my fall winter commuter slash trail bike. Sometimes I use it to take trails to get to work or to get downtown. It's a Trek Marlin frame that I actually got warrantied from an old Gary Fisher Marlin frame. The Trek was nice enough to replace for me. And then I set it up with this secondhand Swytch kit that I got, and it has a rack, and I put fenders on it. It's a really good wet weather kind of winter hardtail slash commuter bike. I'm really happy with it, and this radon fork was pretty cheap, but it's doing pretty good. Pretty happy with it. And I have a conversion, Advent X drivetrain on it, and a Cane Creek Coast 125 millimeter dropper slash suspension seat post. It's an externally mounted dropper post, but I've actually wired it through the front derailleur cable that I'm no longer using. So it works pretty well. The bars are pretty narrow, considering that I like to use this bike to also ride in pretty busy Toronto traffic, and also the single track in Toronto is pretty narrow and winding as well. So I like cutting my bars pretty short. And right now I'm running a DHF in the front with a Recon Race in the back, and as it starts to get snowy and icy, I will switch to Schwalbe Ice Biker Pros. Anyways, yeah, that's my kind of off-weather shoulder season bike. In terms of using a Swytch kit for off-roading, I would say it's definitely would not be my first choice. I mostly use it because I got it secondhand for very cheap. But and I find that the having the motor on the front wheel, I mean, there might be some kind of small advantages to having it on the front, but for the most part it's just a liability. It loses traction in the snow, and it just makes the handling a little bit awkward. I've gotten used to it. It's good enough for my purposes, but to put in perspective, the only reason I use it is because I got this kit for $350 Canadian. So, that's really, really cheap. I also got the frame for free. So this was a budget build for me, but I'm not sure that I would recommend this particular budget build for anyone else, because Trek Marlin frames on their own they're not a bad frame, but they're not really, I would say it's not worth paying $600 or $700 for a through axe or a quick release hardtail frame. They have decent geometry now on some of the modern ones. This is not one of those ones. This is the, I think, 2020 Marlin 6. So it has pretty old school geometry on it, which as a commuter bike is fine. But for a real trail bike, it's definitely pretty outdated geometry. But for my purposes, Toronto is not a city with a ton of elevation. So having a fairly kind of wrecked geometry, kind of steep head angle bike is really fine for most, if not, probably 90%. Oh, I'm going right. It climbs very well. Obviously the motor helps a bit with that, though it's a very low torque motor. I actually find the motor much more helpful on the road than I do on trail. I'm a pretty heavy guy. I weigh about 230 pounds. So it's not what I would say, it's not a particularly great climber. I would say it's actually a really bad climber as far as e-mountain bikes go. But this is my off weather bike, so I try to, try not to go too expensive on any of the components, because I know this bike is going to be dealing with a lot of salt and a lot of snow. There's a lot of mud and bad weather, so it's, like I said, very good for my purposes. And if you can get a Swytch kit cheap, it's actually not a bad fit for some of these slightly older Trek Marlin frames, even some of the newer ones that are. The only problem is, as far as I know, unless you buy a new fork for any modern mountain bike, it will come with a through axle. And I think Swytch is just starting to begin to support through axle frames, but they don't support boost spacing. So I don't know what that will mean for running a Swytch kit on a more modern Trek or hardtail. I think there's probably some entry level mountain bikes that still have a quick release fork, but as far as I can tell, even the ones that have quick release frames are usually running through axle forks, just simply because the market is not really offering quick release forks very much anymore. Oh, greasy. So yeah, this is probably not a build that a lot of people would consider or reproduce, but I figured I would share my bike just so, if anyone has one of these kits lying around, or is using an entry kind of commuter mountain bike, that you can definitely use it for light trails. Just have to get the appropriate tires. Most, in my experience, of these types of bikes don't come with adequate tires. They come with tires that probably are best left on the road or on gravel. They just don't have enough tread for mud and loose conditions or very dry conditions. So it's really, these kind of bikes are really more mountain bike aesthetic than they are mountain bike performance. That being said, there's nothing, as far as I can tell, unsafe about them. Trek's frames are very good quality, and they are actually tested to the same safety standards as all the other trail ready bikes. You know, they're obviously not rated to the same fork size, but at the 100 millimeter, 120 millimeter fork mark, in theory, they are actually tested to more or less the same safety standards as their full suspension or more capable hardtails, like the Roscoe. Now, my primary bike is a 140-130 Norco Fluid, but for this time of year, because it gets so greasy and gross down here, I don't like to wear out my nicer Fox suspension and components on in these types of conditions, especially now with all the salt on the road. And this bike also doubles, like I've said already, as a get around town commuter for me in the winter. Anyways, yeah, those are my thoughts on this setup and this bike. Let me know if you're running something similar, or if if you have any opinions on my thoughts and you know, what your take has been. If you're running a similar setup on your bike, I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are, because you know, I really don't know anyone. I don't think I've even seen online really anyone with a, you know, capable Swytch mountain bike. It's a bit of a weird combination, and it's not really a overlapping customer demographic aside from being both bikes.